Thanks, Mary Kay. I'm Karen. I am an alcoholic. And thanks for being here tonight. And I knew when Mary Kay asked for my number, I thought, oh no, she's going to ask me to speak. And she did. And I've been taught never to say no. So it's really an honor to be here tonight. And it's a miracle that I can stand here and do this, because there was a time when I couldn't put, a whole sentence together, let alone a thought. So it really is a miracle. And the other part of this miracle tonight is my husband's here. And I took him on my journey into my alcoholism, and he's been with me on my journey into recovery. And anybody that knows me for any time knows that I usually refer to him as St. Thomas. His name is Tom. And because to put up with me, come on, for all those years of my drinking. So he's been a great support. And actually, it was his choice to be here tonight. I left it totally up to him. Imagine that, there used to be a time when I told him, what to do and when to do it and how often. But I try not to do that anymore today, and I don't think he's going to tell you any different, at least not right now. And, what a miracle that I could stand here and laugh about that. Tell you a little bit about myself. Is my sobriety date is February 28th, 1997, which was 17 years yesterday. And, I couldn't go 17 hours without a drink. And I couldn't go, 12 hours without a drink, but 17 years. And, I don't ever want to take the credit for that. I mean, I've done the footwork, but I know God got me here, and as long as I stay close to Him, He'll keep me here. I don't want to say a whole lot about my drinking, because I drank like you did. I drank to oblivion to try to escape reality. I didn't like the way life was. The first time I took a drink, I remember I was about 13, and I'm just going to tell you how I was introduced to alcohol, because when I grew up in a normal home, so I thought was normal. My parents didn't drink. I grew up in Ohio. I got sober in Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. And, we lived in one place all our lives when we were growing up as children. I have two sisters, one that is in the program, and one that, I don't know. She's the oldest, and we really don't get along very well, never did, and that's okay. But my other sister and I have reconciled after about, I think it was like 7 or 8 years. I got kind of pissed off at her, had a resentment, and I actually had to drive to Ohio last year and make an amends to her, and our relationship is back better than ever, and another miracle of the program. But growing up, I had that feeling, never quite fit in, belonged, and I think everybody here can identify with that. And at 13, our neighbor around the corner, Debbie was her name, her parents had this lime vodka. And when they, I don't know, there was like maybe a third of a bottle, and we drank a little bit out of there, and I thought, wow, we got to get some more, and we used to walk, this is crazy, we used to walk to the stores, the plazas and the stores that, a few miles down the road, and I think we were 7th grade, no, even younger, 6th grade maybe, trying to buy alcohol, like we were old enough, like we even looked like we were old enough, but, I said, well, come on, let's try. And I just, that was, and the next time I drank was at my oldest sister's wedding, and I remember blacking out that night. The first time I really drank, blacking out, and I thought that's why everybody drank. But my parents never drank. My father had one drink in the whole time I was growing up. My mother never had a drink. She said she had one drink one time, a Singapore sling, and the bed spun all night, and I just, So, yeah, I think it was never talked about in our family, but I think my great-grandfather was an alcoholic. because I was about a year and a half sober, and my dad told me, he said something to me about, well, your great-grandfather used to drink, and I didn't know. I mean, it's sure it's in our family, but no, you don't talk about that stuff. But I always had that hard time fitting in and feeling a part of and making friends because I was always so shy. As my mother used to say, she used to call me bashful. And I thought, I hated that word, It's one of the dwarves. And and I was, I could never carry on a conversation with people and, look anybody in the eye and talk to them. And so, I have this coin. So this is how I tell my story. I have this coin. It has, I don't even remember who gave it to me, and I always carry it with me when I speak. And it has the 12 steps on it in one word. And the writing is really, really small, so I had to put it on a piece of paper because I can't read this anymore. It's so small. But I knew I was an alcoholic. Well, I knew about AA only because it's a kind of a funny story. A girl I had met in school, I'm talking in college, she asked me to go to an AA meeting with her, and I said, sure, Well, she was drunk that night. I didn't know. We went to this AA meeting, and I just remember seeing all these, white cups and smoking, and like this room was packed full of people. And I didn't understand anything about it, but so I knew AA was out there. And, it just occurred to me, God must have put that in my head back then because he knew I was going to need it. So, how things work out. But my drinking progressed pretty bad, and actually one day I did need to come to AA, and I had a DUI. Actually, that was January of 97. Was it? 97? Yeah, 97. And I had tried to get sober myself a couple times. I lasted 3 weeks, 3 miserable weeks, and I don't recommend that because it didn't work. And I had to be beaten down enough to surrender and totally surrender and ask God to help me. We all know that prayer. And this time I didn't ask him, on conditions, do it, get me out of this mess this time and then I'll quit drinking. It wasn't like that. But when my drinking did progress, it's because I couldn't accept the way the world was. And I just couldn't accept the way things were. And I remember the day that I knew I had a drinking problem, but I didn't want to admit I was an alcoholic. And I can remember, I remember during my drinking too that I remember I hated the sunny days. In Ohio, where I'm from, they're a rarity. And I couldn't, I didn't like the sunny days because I didn't want to go outside and be in the sun and hear the birds and all that because I couldn't take part in it because I had a drink. On my job, I just oozed, alcohol. I mean, you could, it oozed out of every pore. And I didn't think people could smell alcohol on me because it was vodka, That's wrong. Wrong. I'll have to tell you that what led up to me coming into the program is, what I used to do was when I thought that maybe people were catching on to me, that I was drinking a lot too much, I would quit that job and get another one. And working in the medical field, it wasn't too hard to find another job. So I skipped around jobs a lot until one day, supervisor I worked for a big company, and she came down, which I thought was really, really weird. She came down, I think it was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and came to where I was working, and she's like, coming with me. I was like, She was coming with me. I'm taking you to go get a blood alcohol level. I was like, oh my God, gig was up. So, and the whole way there, you know, I had to get in the car, and she took me to the hospital. And the whole time, I blamed my husband. He was the reason I drank. Everybody was the reason I drank. I wasn't the reason I drank. It was everybody else's fault. And but see, she had been to Al-Anon. I didn't know that. Her husband was, her ex-husband was a recovering alcoholic. I don't know if he ever got into recovery. So she knew, BS when she was hearing it. And she took me there, and they admitted me to the hospital, and I got out. And I was just so embarrassed about that. And of course, I didn't go back to that job. I didn't want to. I didn't want to go back and face those people. But that's when I tried to do it on my own. I lasted, like I said, the 3 weeks. And I remember, you might remember this too. I remember, this is a few houses ago where we used to live, and I was sitting upstairs in our bedroom drinking a beer. I don't know, it might have been 11 in the morning, I don't even know, because I drank, I drank instead of coffee. Who drank coffee? I drank in the morning. I didn't drink coffee anymore. And I told my husband, I says, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I was sitting with a beer in my hand, and I says, I think I have a problem. Of course, he was probably saying, yes, yes. But, and I said, so, why didn't you call me on it? And I remember he says, because it wouldn't have done any good. And it was so true, because had he called me on my drinking, he never did. He really never did. It wouldn't have made a difference. You know how they say in the big book, frothy, emotional, uphill, it doesn't work. But my drinking progressed and progressed, and like I said, I tried to stay sober on my own, and I couldn't. And I had that isolation. I just isolated myself. I didn't want to go anywhere. I couldn't look people in the eye. When I was at work before all this, my downward spiral began, I would be at work, and I was walk with my head down, and I wouldn't look at anybody. And I remember the cleaning guy said to me one day, he goes, "Smile, it's not that bad," And but today it's a whole different story. I mean, don't stand behind me in the checkout line at the grocery store, because I'll talk your leg off. It's a whole different story today. I'm not afraid to look people in the eye or say, hey. But I remember how it used to be when I was. And because, I didn't want anybody to get too close, because number one, they would smell it. And, number two, I had such a thick wall, barriers to protect myself, because I was escaped from reality. So finally, the day came. I don't want to tell you a whole lot about the way I drank, which I just did, but it was oblivion. I drank for oblivion. And I remember my husband telling me that one time. He goes, "You drink for effect. I drink for pleasure." I thought, doesn't everybody drink for effect? I mean, seriously. I don't get that, You have a few sips of a drink and leave it there. But, I had the DUI in January, and I don't even remember. My neighbor came and got me. He had a towing company, and I don't think I drank that morning, but I was just so hungover. And I slid on the ice, It wasn't because I still had so much alcohol in me. So I slid on the ice, and I hit a pole. And when the cops came, he had a radio, so he heard, and he came and got me. And I don't remember it, and I really don't want to remember it. But I'm sure I was handcuffed. I don't even know. And did Paul get me out of jail? I don't even remember. But, and I remember I was just so ashamed. I remember I went up and hid in the bedroom, and the kids were downstairs, and I can hear them talking to my husband, and it's just like, oh, God, they know I did it again. They knew I was drinking, and they're talking about me, and you know, I was at that point where I didn't even want to look in the mirror, you know, because I couldn't look at myself in the mirror because what I saw really was, I was appalled, you know. I looked the way I felt, and it wasn't good. And I remember the next day my mother came up. I had finally come down the stairs the next day, and my mother came up, and you know, she was going to shame me into getting sober, and I just so remember it like it was yesterday. And she said to me, she was, "So you're at it again, huh?" And I said, "You know, there's nothing you can say to me that I don't already know." And I think I was on my way to my lowest low at that point, and you know, the remorse, the shame, the guilt, and all the bewilderment, all that, the four horsemen, you know, the terror that, what did I do? What did I say? Where do I go from here? And where do I go from here is when I finally picked up the phone and I called the Youngstown Intergroup. And the guy, he was on the phone and he talked to me for a while. And he said, "Well, there's a new meeting, women's meeting today." And he goes, "Well, why don't you come on up to the intergroup?" Well, don't I walk in there? And we grew up together. Our yards were catty corner. I was like, holy smoke. And I mean, who would have thought, you know, it was somebody I grew up with and I never knew. So he said, "Well, there's," you know, we talked for a while, and he said, "Well, there's a women's meeting today at 12 o'clock. And I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Well, so," he goes, he was telling me about going to meetings. And I said, "Well, how long do you have to go to the meetings?" And he goes, "As long as you're sucking air." and it's true. And it is true. So, so I went to that first meeting I was so scared, but I was so desperate. I was so afraid, but I just knew I didn't want to do this anymore. And, you know, when I picked up that phone, though, it was a moment of clarity. And only God can give me that moment of clarity. My mind didn't work very well at all back then. It doesn't work all that great now, but, you know, it works better than it did. And so I couldn't figure anything out. And I went to that meeting, scared to death. And when I walked in that meeting, there was all these women in there, and that's when I got hope. I finally had some hope. Because they were laughing and, you know, joking around and just really, really very welcoming. And I thought, wow, maybe I can do this, you know. And so they gave me some numbers, and of course I didn't call them. And that's just the hardest thing to do is when, you know, you first get here, is to call somebody. So I went to another meeting that same night. Actually, my husband took me. I don't think I was allowed to drive for a while. And, you know, he took me, the kids were in the car, he took me, dropped me off at the meeting. I don't know what he did, if he drove, I think he drove around. And I was so afraid to go into that meeting, you know, my second meeting that day, but I didn't want to drink again. And I knew I had to go to that meeting. And I looked for any face that I had seen that day at the women's meeting. And I latched on to anybody that looked familiar. And then I went to meeting the next day. And I knew I was an alcoholic, but I never fully accepted it. And when I heard other people describe their alcoholism, I was like, that's me, you know, I am an alcoholic. And, you know, it was like a burden was lifted because somebody knew. I was able to admit it. And I didn't want to admit it at first, you know. I mean, I knew I had a drinking problem, but I didn't want anybody else to know. I imagine that one. And everybody knew. But, because, you know, if I admitted that meant I had to do something about it. And so I was ready to do that. So acceptance, first step, you know, acceptance. How do you do acceptance? How do you accept something that you don't like? I never understood that. But I read the greatest definition one time in this, a book a friend had given me, and I just happened to open it up one day, and it said, acceptance is acknowledging the reality of the situation. It's like, well, I can do that. You know, it is what it is. So I was able to admit that I was an alcoholic, and I was ready to do what I was told and what was suggested. I was ready. I really was ready. You know, bottom line is, how bad did I want it? I wanted it really bad. And I still do today. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up here, you know. So acceptance. And today, you know, accepting things, there's a lot of things that, like my kids, they do things, their lives, you know, it's their lives. It's not my life. My one son wanted to go to the Army, and I was like, oh, geez, no. And I said, you know what? I fully support you. It's your decision, and I accepted it. That was the reality of the situation, you know. And he's not going now. He's got a good job, so it ended up he's not going. It all worked out, but, you know, pretty good that way. And there's just things going on in my life. You know, my oldest son, he's one of us, and he went to prison twice, and he doesn't go to meetings. I was like, oh, you know, all I can do is pray for him. You know, I can't tell him, because it doesn't work. You know, frothy emotional pill doesn't do it. So I can accept things a little bit easier today, but every once in a while, you know, I take things back because I want it all my way. But I have to remember that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. And that's what I hung on to when I was first sober. You know, everything happens for a reason. And I hung on to that so hard. And because I didn't have too much faith when I got here. I mean, I knew there was a God, but I thought he was for sissies. You know, I really did. And I never really tapped into that because, like I said, I thought God was for sissies. Well, I know that's so different today because that is my strength today, which is the second step is faith. And, you know, restored to sanity. I heard that, the second step, and I thought, wow, that's still my favorite step. Still my favorite step. I love the second step because I can go from sane to nuts and like that. My thinking can go on me so quick, which is why I need all of you in here, because you know, you got to check my thinking for me. I got to run my thoughts past somebody who maybe is a little bit more saner than I am, or can see the way that I'm thinking is wrong. So I'm not afraid to do that today. So I do have a faith today, and I just have to trust God that everything is the way it's supposed to be. You know, I moved here. This is a crazy story. We lived in Ohio. We had just remodeled our house. My husband had a good job. I had a job. I had a good job, but I was miserable at it, and couldn't. For 3 years, I tried to hang on to that job, and I couldn't. So I get online, look at the Army's hiring, right? North Carolina, Fort Bragg. And I was like, oh, whoa, wouldn't that be cool? Okay. Leap of faith. Applied, got the job, moved down here, left everybody back in Ohio for a year. And because, you know what, I had all the green lights from God. I came down to get a physical and just to check the area out, and the ladies, the nurse that gave me my physical happened to have a sister who had a house for rent, and it was closed. Everything just fell into place, and I felt truly in my heart that this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't know why. Is it maybe for me to touch somebody's life or somebody to touch my life? I don't know. But I truly believe that God brought me here for a reason, and I just have to believe that. So my faith has got me through a lot. You know, I had to go clean out a hotel room some years ago. Two of my sons are heroin addicts, and they were staying in a motel, and all their possessions were there. They they were in jail, and I had to go clean that room out. And you know what? I was able to do that. I was able to do that without falling apart. I mean, you know, I was, I just felt such sadness doing it, but I didn't have to take a drink over that. And that was really a hard thing for me to do. And, you know, God's given me such strength. Like when my parents died about a year apart of cancer. And I only tell this because just to show how sobriety worked in my life is that, you know, there's, like my mother came up when I got that DUI and said, oh, you're at it again. I was the one that she would call to come down and give her a bath. You know? She was dying of cancer so weak, and she called me on Saturday and said, "Would you come down and give me a bath?" She wouldn't let anybody else do it, you know. And I remember many times, you know, I would pray on my way there, and I said, "God, please put a smile on my face." And you know, I couldn't go in there and fall apart, but He gave me the strength to go in there with a smile on my face, and help her and do what I needed to do. And like hospice would call me, and it happened again the next year with my dad. And I thought, you know, what a miracle, what a privilege, what an honor it was for me to be able to do that. Had I been drinking, you know, nobody would have wanted me around. That had all been worried about me, but instead I was able to help them. And yeah, what a miracle, you know. The third step is, I can't read that, surrender and trust. Yeah, that's a hard one for me because I want, you know, I still want things my way. I do. Because when things don't go really nice and good, it hurts. And I don't like the hurt. So I try to make everything nice and cozy and soft and, you know, for me, because that's the way I want it, you know. But it's not that way. It's not that way. You know, life is life. You know, it goes, you know, like this, and then it can go low. And through the years, you know, when I first got sober, I was way down here. Then I would go way up here. Then I would go way down here. You know, that's balance, no balance. But eventually, it starts to even out a little bit, and I can go on an even keel for a longer time than I ever could. And then, you know, I can go like this, and that's okay because I get back to here. Because I go to meetings. Because I talk to the women in the meetings. Sorry, guys, I talk to the women. I do. They're my friends. They'll save my life. And I pray. I do pray. You know, sometimes they're quick ones, you know, like, okay, God, you know, like, whatever. Some mornings that's my prayer, you know. Okay, God, whatever. Whatever happens, happens. What can I do, you know? And I talk to God on my way to work. You know, He sits right here. And we have some good discussions. So, you know, sometimes I just, like, tell Him what I need, you know. But I always get what I need. I got a lot of wants, but I always get what I need. So I have to just trust. And, you know, the third step prayer, while y'all were saying the, what is it, the serenity prayer, I was saying the third step prayer over here while I was sitting because that saved me one day. Early on, I don't even know how, if you ask me a timeline, I really don't know. But I remember when we lived on Coit Road. It was early in sobriety, and I remember one day I got mad over something stupid, and my first thought was to go get a drink. And I knew I couldn't do that. So I went upstairs, the same room where, you know, I used to do all my drinking. I went upstairs and I got on my knees and I memorized the third step prayer. I didn't get off my knees until I memorized that prayer, and that passed. I didn't find it necessary to go and get a drink that day. That instant solution to take a drink was gone. So I know this really works. So we get to the fourth step, right? That's about honesty. Oh, whoa, that was hard. That was really hard for me, the fourth step. I did not want to do it. 1, 2, and 3, I'm fine. 4 and 5, Because that's when I really had to take a look at myself, and it's really not what I wanted to do. Because I had to look at all that ugly stuff in my life, and I remember when I was writing out my 4th step, and I sat there crying writing this thing out, all 17 pages, front and back. And it was stuff that I didn't want to look at. And they say, if you don't do a 4th step, you're going to drink again. And I didn't want to drink again. So I did what I was told. I drugged my feet for 2 years. Well, 2.5 actually. And because I didn't want to do it, but I knew I didn't want to drink even more. So I did my 4th step, and my 5th step actually didn't hold anything back. And I didn't have that amazing feeling, but it was a gradual for me. And I know that the sponsor that I had at that time, I knew she wouldn't judge me. And I was very, very careful of who I chose to do my 5th step with. And she was wonderful. She was wonderful about it. And we burned it when I was done, because I was like, it's gone, it's past. And I truly believe that it's my belief that I need to do a house cleaning every so often, because when things start to pile on, just start sticking, it's time to do another 4th step. And I know I need to do one on myself, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, about the forgiveness, which is the 8th step. But when I was doing my 4th, writing it out, and I knew I had to do my, tell my 5th, share it with another person, I just kept thinking, okay, it's not going to kill you. You're not going to die. You're not going to die. And I didn't. I lived through it. And it was a hard thing for me to do. The second time I did a 4th and 5th wasn't so difficult. Let's see. Willingness, the 6th step, willingness. I got to always remember to be willing, like tonight. Didn't want to do it, but I'm willing. Because if we're not willing, if I close that door, I'm in trouble. I know that. And I've just seen, too many people that aren't willing to do the things they need to do. It's not about them, it's about me. I just know it happens. If I give up being willing, it's not going to work anymore. So I have to be willing to do this. So I try to be willing, and if I'm not willing about something, then I have to pray for the willingness to be willing. So, and that works too. Now, I know I skipped over one of the steps, but I kind of incorporated it. So the 9th step is freedom, and wow. Making those amends. I have more to make. Oh, it's got more to make. There's always going to be more to make. And but what a freedom, Free to be me today. I don't have to be somebody else. Free from the bondage of self. Free from alcohol. Hostage. I'm not a hostage to alcohol anymore. And that is like so amazing to me. I think 17 years without a drink. Man, it just blows my mind sometimes. It really does. But I'm free. I'm free to make mistakes today, I don't have to do everything perfect. I don't have to do that perfection thing anymore. What a freedom, really. Think about that sometimes. Free from that daily drinking. The 10th step is perseverance. Some days it's just putting one foot right in front of the other, It's our inventory. I try to be very, very careful of not to have to make an amends to somebody at the end of the day. I choose my words very carefully, and I pick my battles today. I don't have to go to every fight I'm invited to. I learned that from somebody. That's not original for me. But I have to be vigilant. I have to keep on doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And there's times I, say, I don't want to go to a meeting. I'm tired. I'm busy. I want to go shopping. I go to a meeting. I have to go to a meeting. I know how important my sobriety is. I just tell you this. I was putting my sobriety second. I was back in school. Crazy, right? Crazy. Going back, I wanted to work on my master's. So I had a semester in at Fayetteville State, and then I switched over up here to Sand Hills. They brought a program up there, and I am, going to school only 2 nights a week, just 2 classes. I work full time. I was miserable. I was missing my home group so bad. So last week I withdrew from the program, and I'm so happy. I don't, because I was putting my sobriety second. I was putting this stupid goal, some stupid goal of getting a master's ahead of my serenity. And, I got these messages in the rooms and in some of the readings that I was reading that, anything I put before my sobriety is going to be the first thing I lose. And it's not just that I would lose my family. It's not the material things. I would lose what I've worked so hard to get back. We were there, and my daughter had her twins, and I saw them when they were like 30 minutes old, and I stayed with her for a week or 2 after they were born, and I thought, what? Had I been drinking, it wouldn't have happened. She wouldn't have not wanted me there anywhere near. She would have said, stay in North Carolina. I don't want you here. But I got to be part of that miracle. So, one foot in front of the other some days. It's just that easy. It could be just that hard, too. The 11th step, patience. Oh, geez. That's a tough one. I think I've grown in that area. I'm not sure. He'll agree. He's shaking his head, yeah, already. He's like, yeah. I try to be more patient today, and because everybody's got their stuff. Everybody has their stuff, and some are sicker than others, right? Some are sicker than others, and if I'm not, I don't. My family, my people around me were so patient with me. How can I not be patient with other people? And in the 12-step, charity and love. Still work on that too. I think I've grown in the last year in this category. I'm not so quick to judge people because everybody has their stuff. I don't know what anybody's life was like or is like. I don't know what anybody's going through. So, and when I got here, I was a mess when I got here, to the rooms. And I remember my sponsor said, she says, it's really, really, really simple. We just love you back to life. And that's what it is, That's exactly what it is. Because, when I was drinking, I was, make sure I put this the right way, homicidal and suicidal. I put it the other way one time, and somebody said, no, it goes homicidal and suicidal. Because I was going to take you out and myself. Because he was, just how twisted my thinking was. I wanted to die. I really did. Where we used to live, there was a few acres of woods, and thank God we didn't have guns in our house then, because, I might not have taken him, but I was going to take myself out. I really would have, because I just thought, well, 2 bottles of vodka and the gun, that would do it. And it would have done it, but we didn't have guns in the house. And I also thought about, what would my kids do if their mother committed suicide? What would they do, Yeah, drunk mother committed suicide. Wouldn't that be a great legacy to leave them? And, you know, it's funny because I talk to everyone. I have 6 kids. And I talk to every one of them during the week. And it's, you know, that's just amazing that they call me every week. They call me, I don't call them. And, you know, because sometimes I think, wow, you know, I know, like, well, my one son, Justin, he lives in Utah, and he called me today, and I was like, wait, this isn't Sunday, because every Sunday he calls me at 7 o'clock, you know, like clockwork. And they do that today. And I'm like, oh, man, you know, one drink, and that all goes away. It all goes away. You know, I believe that we're very special people, that we've been chosen. We've been chosen to have this gift, you know, and it's up to me what I do with it. You know, I heard this lady say early on when I used to go to this one woman's meeting, she says, oh, I'm grateful to be a recovering alcoholic woman. And I thought, you're grateful to be an alcoholic? You're nuts, you know? But I understand that today because, you know, had I not been an alcoholic and found the solution, I'd be wandering out there aimlessly, you know, aimlessly. I don't know why I was chosen. I really don't know. And I don't have to know why. I just know that I am. And all of us sitting in here are too. To carry the message, I don't know. It's been one heck of a journey, you know, it has. And because I remember when I first got sober, the ladies, because I hung with the women's group, and they said, hold on, because it's one hell of a ride. And it's been one heck of a ride. And I hope to reach 18 years next year. I really do. I just want to end. I hope something that I said today, somebody got something out of that, because I never know. I don't always talk a lot in the meetings because I don't always think I have something to say. And I got to get over that, too, you know. And when I say something, I want it to be profound, you know, something great. And it's not, you know, but it's not always like that. But, you know, you never know what you might hear somebody might, you know, what I say might click with somebody. And, you know, I can hear something from somebody else. And if someone says it, the same thing, it means something totally different. But, it's been one heck of a journey. And I just know I'm not in the driver's seat. Sometimes I take it back, but I'm really not in the driver's seat. But I want to end with this story. I just had to write the order down because I always mess up a joke anyway. But it isn't a joke. It's the true essence, I feel, of the program. There was a suffering alcoholic stuck in the pit, deep, deep, dark pit. And he kept crying out, help me, somebody help me. And psychiatrist, the doctor was walking by, and he heard him crying out. He's like, help me. And the psychiatrist said, you know what, here, take these pills for 30 days and see how you do, and then call me. And the suffering alcoholic is still down in this deep, deep, dark pit. And he's crying out, help me, somebody help me. And the priest walks by, and he looks down, and the suffering alcoholic says, help me out of this pit, help me some way, Father, help me out. And the priest says, well, come to Mass on Sunday. And the suffering alcoholic is still down in the pit, and a recovering alcoholic walks by. And he hears the alcoholic saying, help me get out of this pit. And the recovering alcoholic jumps down in the pit with them. And the suffering alcoholic says, man, what's the matter with you? You're nuts. We're both stuck down here now. And the recovering alcoholic says, no, follow me. I know the way out. Thanks.